rangelands of the American West are more than just wide open spaces. They support entire ways of life, from wildlife habitat to working ranches, rural communities to critical industries. But that balance is under threat. This is a fight for the future of the West.
Everybody should care. They affect everybody, everywhere, eventually, somewhere down the line.
Non-native annual grasses like cheatgrass, medusahead, and ventenata already impact over 100 million acres, yet they continue to spread and increase in abundance. Once they establish, these invasive plants reduce forage quality for livestock and wildlife, suppress native plants, affect nutrient cycling, and alter wildfire frequency and severity. They dry early, burn fast, and often return stronger after fire. This silent invasion can alter the ecology and economy of the entire region.
When did you say your family got into this country, Tom?
My granddad bought our ranch in 1947. I was born and raised on this land. I'm the third generation on this ranch. My boys will be the fourth.
How have you seen cheatgrass move in after the quarter fire?
Well, the cheatgrass, there's always been a little bit here, but never to what we have now, and that's the trouble with fire. You know, we had a bunch of old decadent sagebrush, and the fire burned hot, and so the cheatgrass just moves in. But the nutritional value in cheatgrass is not what a lot of these other plant species are. They'll graze a little bit of it, but it gets to a certain point and they won't touch it, and so basically this whole area we're looking at is almost unusable to livestock.
Yeah. Do you think you have concerns for like your two boys and what the potential of losing more ground?
The potential for what we're looking at right here, we could lose this whole lower forest pasture of ours to medusahead if we don't get something done.
No, absolutely.
And the other problem with cheatgrass is it takes habitat like this, valuable wildlife habitat, valuable forage, and basically turns it to crap. Wildlife use it very little. And the fact that it's so flammable, it cures out very early in the summer, and you've got this extremely flammable fine fuel bed on the landscape, and all of a sudden you're getting fires, boom, 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 every couple of years.
Biggest misconception in our area is that it doesn't matter. And so you see this increase of invasive annual grasses over like a 10-year period, and then the next thing you know, you're like, oh, it's everywhere. And what can we do about it? I think the more important question is, what happens if we don't do something?
Across the West, landowners, scientists, and land managers are stepping up. Each region faces its own challenges, but the solution is shared. Act early, work together, and defend what matters most with strategic actions. Through cross-boundary collaboration, targeted treatments, and landscape-scale planning, the fight is on.
Our landscape is dominated by sagebrush, bitterbrush, blue bunch wheatgrass, needle and thread, and Indian rice grass. We'll also have some other forbs, but it's pretty simplistic. We're trying to protect the sagebrush here. We're also really trying to protect the antelope bitterbrush because this is all transitional wildlife area. We're standing in the antelope migration corridor as well as the mule deer migration corridor. And this is the sage-grouse core area too. Yeah. So all those things overlap here, making it very important. This landscape, as we look from north to south, all of the deer from Jackson and Sublette County all come off the mountains and come basically between this ridge and town to migrate south, all the way south down until they get enough out of the snow that they're happy with that. And then they'll migrate in the spring all the way back up.
The Gunnison Basin is one of like 3 remaining high elevation intact sagebrush landscapes in the state of Colorado. The Gunnison sage-grouse is a federally listed sage-grouse. Over 85% of the birds live here in Gunnison. The community of Gunnison, including the county, the ranchers, the Forest Service, the Park Service, the BLM, really came together when the bird was potentially going to be listed. And I think everybody really recognized that habitat for the bird here was super important. And the sage-grouse sort of became the star child of wanting to conserve a lot of the sagebrush in this basin. And for a long time, it was thought that this place was too cold for cheatgrass to become a big invasive here. And everybody thought, oh, well, cheatgrass will never become an issue here. When the sage-grouse was listed back in 2013, the Fish and Wildlife Service did not actually list cheatgrass as a threat to the sage-grouse. Over the subsequent years, we had warming conditions, several mega droughts, and we just have seen an incredible spread of cheatgrass in this basin. And the recovery plan back in 2019 identified cheatgrass as one of the main threats to the Gunnison sage-grouse in this basin.
So this area is super important for pronghorn, antelope, year-round. And then there are also some sage-grouse leks just up the road here in these existing sagebrush islands. But historically, this was all sage-grouse habitat. You know, cheatgrass is really good at what it does, and it totally takes over. And then once it's there, it's really hard to get anything perennial and desirable back in the system.
So we have a regionally significant pronghorn migration corridor that is just north of this fire scar. Every spring and fall, they're running that route, and they cross about 8+ miles of craters lava. It's the brewer sparrow, sage thrashers, 2 of the most common sagebrush-dependent songbirds. We have lots of them, but they are sagebrush-dependent, obviously, and so they're in decline across the West, and we're no different, and so this certainly doesn't help.
The Ferris-Semino area is an area that bighorn sheep were transplanted to, reintroduced to their native range, and they've done really, really well here, which is awesome. And in fact, bighorn sheep love fire. They love being able to see their predators. They like having escape terrain. And so fires are, although great for bighorn sheep, the incoming cheatgrass that tends to follow is not great. And for that reason, the Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation partners with other agencies and other groups to treat these areas so that the bighorn sheep have not only excellent habitat in terms of escape terrain and the ability to see predators, but also so they have high quality forage and native grasses that they can eat, feed on.
The trends are evident. Large portions of the landscape have transitioned from high quality grasslands and shrublands to those that are more dominated by invasive annual grasses such as cheatgrass and medusahead. The scale is beyond that which any single organization can manage alone. So agencies, landowners, and partners are coming together to focus on areas that are important enough to implement restoration practices at large scale and to proactively defend those sites that still maintain the habitat quality characteristics that they want to manage for.
So this was a fire, started in 2000 from the highway back over there. Could have been tire chains dragging or a transmission blowing up or somebody flicking a cigarette. I don't know. We get a lot of fires caused that way. It burned 180 acres. We didn't do anything at the time, but 4 or 5 years later, our vegecologist was looking at it and realized it really wasn't recovering. So he came in with sort of an experimental project. He had 2,500 native shrubs, sagebrush and rabbit brush and stuff like that, and we came in and found areas like this here where there's some soil development. It's not just a lava ridge, where we could do something. And we came in and we first sprayed the weeds, mostly cheatgrass we're spraying, and then in behind that we planted, and we did have really good success. We had 40% survival rate, which is great in the world of planting native shrubs in a high desert.
This is pretty typical as far as results for this type of ecosystem. It's kind of I won't say standard treatment, but it's a treatment we do a lot, where we'll masopick right after the fire, come back in a year later and drill seed with a native non-native mix. And we use that native non-native mix because it definitely helps keep the cheatgrass out of systems and gets these non-native grasses and forbs and shrubs established in here, and really helps keep those invasive annuals out of here.
Another cool thing about this spot, a lot of these species were seeded in the drill seeding mix, and then the sagebrush and kochia was overseeded, but a lot of this was not seeded too. This needle and thread grass right here, we don't typically include in our seed mixes just because it's really expensive. It's really cool to see that even with all the efforts that we put into this fire, that native natural community is still reestablishing on its own. Yeah, it's super exciting to us to see sagebrush coming in like this in a system.
We definitely work a lot with private landowners on a day-to-day basis. In this part of Wyoming, we do have obviously state land and BLM and Forest Service and stuff like that, but a lot more private land than in some other parts of the West. So the private landowners play a big role in getting on board with the programs. Since it's a early detection rapid response program, we rely pretty heavily on private landowners who are out on the land every day to know what these invasive grasses look like, so that if they find them in a new area, they can report it to us and we can take action from there.
Fall of 17, this was the very first property in Sheridan County we sprayed with the USDA program, and we learned a lot from that.
And that was the plateau milestone.
The thing that I thought was really remarkable here, Doug, was how quickly we saw a response. This good native western wheatgrass and other things, year over year we measured 3 times as much grass in some spots. And that made a difference for you, I'm sure.
A huge difference. Yeah, our carrying capacity, I'm sure, is tripled from the first application to spray till now. So
it's about the relationships and build those relationships. That it's not, I guess, transactional in that way. I'm real happy and proud to support what Doug's family's doing here with my little bit. I shuffle paper to make things like this happen. So
yeah, and we, again, it's partnerships. I think field days are great where people can go through and they can see the treated areas versus the non-treated areas. And we've had neighbors drive through and say, wow, I need to sign up, just because it's in the spring, it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. All the wildlife kind of come into the treated areas. The upland game birds along with the mule deer, antelope, they're all in the treated areas and they're not on the non-treated areas.
Really value the partnership, I would say. Also, I think sometimes when NDOW approaches private landowners and about treating or anything about their private land, they're standoffish, and I totally understand that. And so I think having the ability to have a conversation about, just like we are right now, and being able to do good things for the landscape, both for cattle, quite frankly, and wildlife, is a benefit. And a lot of the land that you own specifically is really important to Nevada's wildlife, and so I think it's a really valuable relationship.
When you're out here on these these rangelands, these arid, I talk about Nevada rangelands, but there's other states too, but we're all in this together. And we have as much public land in Nevada as we do intermingled with private. We're all in this together.
No, absolutely.
It's not one or the other, so we all want what's best. It's just a matter of what path we're going to take to get there. In order to do it, we've all got to be on the same page and work together.
Yeah.
Because if you don't work together, we're not going to get anything done. But if we can work together, we can get a lot accomplished.
So we kind of pulled all those resources, and if anybody had any data, and then we had an open house meeting. Okay. And where we invited the public in, so we had people, you know, ranchers came, folks from oil and gas came that actually had data. And so we started kind of drawing circles on a map, like, let's go check this spot out. And then what we found that year, we treated the next year.
A lot of this country, as you can tell, is really steep, and there's a lot of like rocky, open ground, and that tends to be where the cheatgrass comes in.
So we have a multitude of different ways that we'll treat cheatgrass in the basin. So we'll kind of look at the size of the infestation, the topography, road access, and some of that kind of stuff. And so each one of those different types of crews we'll put on a different sort of treatment or different level of infestation, I guess.
You want to make sure that there's still good planning with those treatments. And again, if you go back and you have that data ahead of time, it really helps you make good decisions on where you want to treat. But you want to treat as quick as you can to give those perennial species the opportunity to recover as quick as possible. So we can come in post-fire 1 year or less than 1 year, that next early summer, late spring, and do those treatments and have really good results with that. The other thing that allows you to do is really see what's coming back and what areas have the greatest need for treatment, especially if funds are limited and you can't just spray the entire fire, as is very rare. You can actually see where those treatments are most needed. We believe cheatgrass seed has a soil life of 5 to 10 years. Our newest herbicide, Rejuvra, will have control for 3 to 5 years. So with most of these treatments, it really is, it's a long game. It's not one treatment and we're done and we're walking away and we know it's going to be gone. We need to expect that it's going to come back and try and plan for in the future that if we go in and treat 50,000 acres this year, we know in 5 to 6, 7 years, we need to have the money rounded up to treat that.
While invasive annual grasses already affect much of the western U.S., there are many places where management during early stages of invasion may prevent degradation, and other areas where land managers are successfully replacing annual grasses with desirable perennial species. Western states, including the 4 featured in this film, have invested over $100 million in the past 5 years to reduce invasive annual grasses and their impacts. Strategic treatments have improved the quality, quantity, and stability of forage for both wildlife and livestock, sometimes more than doubling the habitat's carrying capacity. Sites with less annual grasses and more perennial vegetation stay greener longer into the summer, reducing the ignition risk that may lead to catastrophic wildfires. We can either stand idly by and allow our rangelands to succumb to invasive grasses, or we can work together to manage annual grasses in the places where we stand to lose the most. We can choose to defend our core.
We know the reality is that we're heading into hotter and drier conditions than we've ever had before, and that this landscape is going to adapt and change.
The cheatgrass is highly flammable. It's like gasoline on the landscape. So by treating cheatgrass, we're mitigating that risk, right? We're mitigating the risk to the values, whether that's watershed, structures, human life, wildlife habitat, sage-grouse habitat.
So it's really a combined effort of everybody to come together and be able to do these treatments in a timely manner. Any one of our agencies or groups, organizations can't do a whole lot by ourselves. We're working in mixed ownership landscapes. These projects, they will be on BLM ground, Bureau of Reclamation ground, private ground, state ground. So really one individual or one organization can't cover it all.
There's, mule deer, there's pronghorn, there's bighorn sheep, there's livestock in the area. And so it's great that as partners, whether it's the Wyoming Wild Sheep or it's Muley Fanatics or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or any of these groups that join together to fund these projects, it's always helpful to say, hey, our dollar helped to pay for X amount of dollars, X amount of acres of this project. And I don't feel like any one of us could fund these kinds of treatments at these scales by ourselves.
This has been an issue that has really united our community, and it has been remarkable.
What do I think the landscape is going to look like in 50 years? That is a really good question. It might be the question. The question that we all ask as land managers and land users. I'd like to see a landscape with a highly productive landscape, a lot of real desirable perennial plants that are real productive for livestock and wildlife. And that's what I'm going to be working for generations.
There's still time to protect these lands, but the time for action is now. The future of the West depends on it. Defend your core.